The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everybody, thanks for joining today. My name is Andrew Shikiar. I lead marketing here at FIDO Alliance. Today we have a great webinar for you to update you on the latest and greatest from the FIDO Certified program and the FIDO certification process in general. So we're going to cover the following things today. We're going to look at Steve Wilson from Constellation Research will cover the importance of interoperability, followed by Ramesh Sanpali, the FIDO visionary and co-founder of Knock Knock Labs, along with Adam Powers, our Director of Technology at FIDO Alliance. We'll walk you through the FIDO certification program itself, including some highlights following our first year of the program, as well as some new updates with the program. As you may be aware, just around a week and a half ago, we announced our latest batch of FIDO certifications, and so we'll be highlighting some of those newly certified products. Towards the end, we'll get into tips and tricks for getting certified, and then we'll follow with the question and answer period. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. In regards to Q&A, please feel free to type questions into the question box in your GoToWebinar client. We'll answer some of them midstream if we can during the webinar. At the end of the webinar, we will then ask questions for any remaining questions for the panelists. At that point, you can direct questions either to the panel on the whole or to anyone who has been speaking during the webinar. One last request is at the end of the webinar, or once you sign off, you will be prompted to take a survey. We very much appreciate you taking just a minute or two to fill out the survey. Your feedback helps shape the FIDO webinar program and will be very instructive to us moving forward. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to Steve Wilson, Vice President and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research. Steve?
Thanks a lot, Andrew, and good morning, everybody. Great to be with you. The FIDO Alliance, wow, I was at the sort of soft launch of FIDO at the RSA conference in 2013, just over 3 years ago. And in that time, FIDO has become clearly the most important identity and access management industry group that I've ever seen after 20 years in this industry. It's an amazing testimony to two things. There's a push factor and a pull factor behind the FIDO Alliance. The push factor is obviously the password problem, and enough said about that. FIDO is working to eliminate passwords. But you know, the pull factor that's really interesting is that there is this sophisticated ability to do authentication in the handsets. There's this incredible penetration of cryptography and mechanisms, biometric mechanisms and other authentication mechanisms that FIDO leverages in the mobile phone ubiquity, the mobility ubiquity that's out there amongst consumers now. Mobile first has become the express policy, it's become the mantra of governments and businesses, and FIDO leverages that. If everybody's got mobiles, then mobile becomes the fulcrum of identity management. At Constellation Research, we've been looking at this, and we're producing some new research on the consumerization of identity and the impact that mobile has had on that. We say that the impact of mobile is that the user experience of identity, the UX of identity, is more or less disappearing. You know, once you've unlocked your mobile device, you no longer have to type a username and password each and every time, a different password for every service that you're accessing and every app that you're accessing. The user experience of identity, as we say, is disappearing. And it's doing that because of this technology stack that FIDO has been, I think, largely responsible for promulgating. Just like all complicated technologies and standards, they layer into different aspects of what turns out to be a supply chain of identity access services and components. And FIDO sits right there in the middle of the stack. The whole point of FIDO is that it allows applications to call down through the stack into the mobile device itself and to probe the device to understand the state of the user, to understand who's logged on, to understand things like how long have you logged on, what sort of device did you use to log on, what sort of sensor. And FIDO provides those fine-grained signals so that you can tell the type of technology that's involved. And at the application level then, software can make risk-based decisions about how to authenticate the user and how to allow them into services. So it's all about protocols. FIDO is up there with protocols like NAPs that allow applications to share signals and attributes within an unlocked device. So if we're talking about standards and protocols, that brings us to interoperability. A system like FIDO is only as good as the compliance to those protocols that we've been talking about. So FIDO knew this from the outset. It knew that it could promulgate standards, things like the UAF and U2F protocols that are now well known. But FIDO followed through very quickly and about a year ago now launched its certification program, knowing that if an application was going to use these protocols to drill down through the stack and work out if a particular biometric sensor had been used to unlock the phone, the trustworthiness of those signals and attributes depend on compliance to standards. And therefore, I guess FIDO put its money where its mouth is. And a core part of the FIDO Alliance push from the outset, but now in anger for 12 months, has been the certification program that we're going to hear about today. The news is that over 200 separate devices and applications, technologies have been awarded FIDO certification, 200 of them in just 12 months. So with the growth of the FIDO Alliance itself comes this growth in the realization and the implementation of FIDO standards, the meaningful implementation where the rubber really hits the road with certification. Look, it's great to be here today. I'm going to be available through the webinar to listen to questions and listen to the dialogue. I think it's thrilling news from the Alliance, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from Ramesh and the team in the next hour or so. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you very much, Steve. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to Ramesh, who will share more details on the certification program as well as some of our latest news. Ramesh?
Thanks, Andrew. Let's take this up, and here I'm going to talk today about the certification goals and procedures and the current state of certification process that FIDO Alliance has. The main goals, the three goals of certification process that we have established for FIDO related products are basically enabling implementations to be identified as FIDO, officially FIDO certified. And it's just not mean because the FIDO is the first client-server end-to-end protocol in the market. And there are different pieces of components at various levels that are involved in the FIDO protocol implementation, starting with the authenticator itself to some of the procedures where they execute it, to operating system, to browser, to backend service authentication. So there are different possibilities in different places FIDO plays, and if this needs to be adopted globally at a high scale, there needs to be absolute interoperability between FIDO products on both sides of the ecosystem, client side and server side. And then eventually, as we are going to have more and more products that are going to independently get certified and then work together in the ecosystem, it becomes much easier to promote the FIDO adoption when each one of those players from various segments of the ecosystem, from the device side on the client side to operating system, browser to the backend, then it becomes a tightly secured ecosystem with a very easy to use user experience. So the three goals is primarily to promote the certification process, promote the interoperability, which will lead to faster adoption in the market. Andrew, next slide. So the certification overview, the next slide that I'm going to talk about, It is actually available to both members and non-members. If you were to implement FIDO 1 spec, FIDO spec that was published back in December 2014, you don't necessarily have to be a member of FIDO Alliance. You can take it and you can look into the spec and implement whatever is the relevant part that you have. You can promote all of it if you want to. You can implement it and then go through the certification process that FIDO is running, and once that is certified, then you will get the FIDO certification stamp, which you will be able to use it. And the primary reason is to make sure that there is integrity of the FIDO protocol, that is saved properly and protected properly, and also make sure that depending on what you are implementing, where you are implementing, your services or your devices will be cross-functional with other implementations of FIDO, both on the relying party side as well as the client side. So if you see the procedure itself, the first thing, once you take the public spec and then implement the FIDO on your own, there is a level of self-validation and self-testing that you need to do to make sure you are functionally are implementing FIDO and it works and it functionally end-to-end. This goes back and forth. Then you can bring it to interoperability testing. Interoperability testing is something that's run by FIDO. I believe it is in every quarter. I will let Andrew answer the question answer session, but people, and we also have Adam, who is our responsible person for all the certification process and interoperability testing related stuff. And once that is done, then you will receive the certification of FIDO, which you will be able to use it with the trademarks and the other stuff that is related to the FIDO. We want to make sure that if somebody claims there is a FIDO certification, a FIDO ready products or FIDO certified products, we want to make sure that it goes through the FIDO certification process and it is properly tested, vetted, and also interoperability is guaranteed, to make sure that we will protect the integrity of FIDO ecosystem and FIDO devices out there. Andrew, next slide. So there are multiple deployments are in the market today for FIDO certified products, and if you see the slide, we are more than 200 plus certified products that are available today in the market. In a short period of in less than 2 years, if you see the number of FIDO certified products that are out there from various companies playing their role in the ecosystem and promoting products. These products include major OEMs like Lenovo, Samsung, and Huawei Electronics, and kind of stuff. You can go back to the previous slide. Yeah. So if you see the breadth and the vertical nature of the FIDO certified products in the market, you have OEMs here, you have authenticator companies here, you have operating system companies here, you have back-end carriers like Docomo, and you have devices and device companies both on PC and cell phone market like Huawei, Samsung, Koizera, Sony, and a lot of people have aggressively implemented and deployed these products in the market. If you see the kind of marquee customers that are out there and marquee implementers that are out there, it's quite pleasing to see how quickly FIDO has taken the traction it has taken, the acceptance that it has taken in the market, and it is very nice to see as we are going forward, more and more people we encourage to come and implement FIDO. Next slide, Andrew. So this is a map of from April 15th, which is practically about 14, 15 months back. We had 32 products that were FIDO enabled. Today, if you see, now we have 213 of them in a short span of 14 months. The amount of growth we are seeing, amount of acceptance we are seeing, and not only that, the kind of usage that is coming because of its easy to use nature and secure nature, and also providing various segments of the people to play within their roles is phenomenal. And we just need to make sure that when people implement those things, they truly come back to us for interoperability to make sure that they will be working in a heterogeneous environment in multiple coming from multiple geographies of the market. Next slide, Andrew. So if you see today, Samsung alone, number of, from S5 onwards, they have started implementing FIDO, and in fact, the company that I founded, Knock Knock Labs, has actually done a lot of trusted execution environment for Samsung devices, and going forward, if you see the number of devices that have been enabled, and is phenomenal. And we also have Sharp, Sony, and these are the cell phones that have been unilaterally promoted by Docomo for entire Japan market. And again, the company that I started, Knock Knock, played a very important role of enabling these people in addition to Docomo on the back end. And all these things have been tested for interoperability and for multimodality. These include fingerprinting being used as the modality, iris scanning being used as modality, facial recognition being used as modality. A simple PIN could also be used as a modality. So irrespective of what modality that's available, if you see the earlier slide that Steve talked about, Steve Wilson talked about, and this could be any of the things that are available on the device that could be used for FIDO authentication. And we will, the certification process makes makes sure that these things are interoperable with a FIDO-enabled server on the back end. Next slide. And in addition to Android ecosystem, the Microsoft ecosystem, one of the things that I would really like to stress is even iOS has been, with Touch ID, has been FIDO enabled. In fact, Knock Knock Labs, the company that I founded, has the SDK that can be easily used to take any iOS-based app, to take the application and then immediately FIDO enable and seamlessly work, whether it is an Android phone or a iPhone. The backend infrastructure doesn't have to change anything, and it could be multi-modalities coming in, whether it is iOS operating system or Android operating system, and you will be seamlessly be able to use this ecosystem and on the back end without changing anything, and having different kinds of infrastructure in the back end for different kinds of client devices that are coming in. And we have, as you can see in the before, there are multiple implementations of FIDO. We have been tested with different kind of interoperable devices, both on the client side and server side. This is very critical to know that while biometric is taking a shape and fingerprinting has become a mainstream and other modalities are coming through in a massive scale in the consumer market, it is very critical to understand that not to use biometrics on the client side as a password vault or password storage or password replacement to go to the back end and stuff, or you typing the password, just to submit the password with a fingerprint, like a password vault or a single sign-on kind of a thing. The right way to actually use biometrics fingerprinting in the mass market, which is available right now, is to actually deploy the biometric usage with their use of ease of use in conjunction with FIDO, which will provide stronger security, which will provide privacy that is required, which will also provide the security end-to-end. So if any of the people who are trying to, if anybody is on there in the webinar today who are relying party, as far fingerprinting is becoming mainstream, it's being accepted by everybody, and there are many people who are enabling fingerprinting. The right way to do that is not to just use that as a password vault, but use it in conjunction with FIDO, which will actually eliminate the password completely, and thereby you are actually not trying to address the symptoms that you see in the cybersecurity. You're actually treating the disease itself, where the password is completely eliminated if you use fingerprinting or facial recognition or any other modality on the client side working with FIDO Alliance. you would be actually making your systems a lot more secure, and you'll also be deploying the biometrics in the right way, where you will be addressing the password problem that is out there today, which is increasing day by day. Next slide, Andrew.
Good.
So with that, thank you very much. Andrew, go ahead.
Ramesh, thanks so much. And so I think, as Ramesh mentioned, there's a wide array of devices on market, especially handsets that have built-in FIDO support. There's also an array of second-factor tokens as well that support FIDO. And so the key message for service providers is that as you look at developing and rolling out FIDO authentication, there's a very wide installed base of users who can certainly take part in your services. So with that, let me turn things over to Adam Powers, Director of Technology at FIDO Alliance, to talk about what's new at the FIDO Certification Program and also to walk you through some recent implementation highlights. Adam?
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. So as Steve mentioned in his opening remarks, the certification program is just a little bit over a year old now. We launched April 2nd of 2015. And in the last year, things certainly haven't stood still. There's been a lot of new specifications rolling out, a lot of new changes to the certification program, and all those sorts of things. So I want to talk a little bit about what's changed in certification over the last year. The first big new announcement is U2F Bluetooth Low Energy, or Bluetooth Smart as it's marketed. So in 2014, when the U2F specs originally launched, it launched with just U2F and USB support. In December of last year, we launched U2F NFC support, and then just at this last interop that we had a few weeks ago, we launched U2F BLE support. So now we have authenticators that support Bluetooth Smart. The interesting use case for this, and it may sound like a small thing, is that the authenticators are one click. It's not, you have to pair it and set it up and do a lot of advanced configuration every time you want to use it. And as much as I can talk about it, I don't think it really does it justice until you actually see a live demo. But literally every time you need to do multi-factor authentication on a website, it's just a click of a button. And a few slides from now, we'll actually have some pictures of these new BLE devices, and you'll see the one-click aspect of them. But again, I encourage people to reach out to vendors or try and see these Bluetooth low energy devices at trade shows, because the use of them is just really, really compelling. The other thing that, I'm sorry, previous slide. The other thing that Ramesh was touching on for iOS support and iOS deployments in the ecosystem right now, with BLE support for U2F, obviously that's a great use case for iOS and being able to use U2F with iOS. So it opens up that ecosystem and opens up a whole new set of devices for U2F. So very exciting times for U2F. On the next slide, another big change that we've recently made is the launch of on-demand testing. So as Ramesh was starting to talk about, for the last year we've been doing interop events roughly every 90 days, which means that implementers have to plan ahead. They need to know when the next interop is, when their product launches, and sync up their implementation and certification plans around those interop tests. The new process for on-demand testing enables implementers to pick a date on a calendar when they want to do their interoperability testing. So no longer do you have to wait every 90 days for an interoperability event and do a lot of complicated coordination internally. But now implementers can pick a date off of a calendar. For server implementers, this means you can do remote testing, and it's just as simple as setting up a GoToMeeting, and the certification secretariat will use a bunch of reference devices to certify servers. For authenticators, you can either ship a device or do in-person testing. And again, just very convenient and very fast turnaround time, much easier to fit into the product planning lifecycle. And then the last part of our evolution here is obviously the new programs that are coming out. And the program continues to evolve. We have a number of new certification programs that will be coming out over the next year. One of the ones that's getting the most attention right now is security certification. So that one is third-party lab testing of products to ensure their security. So this is, you send a phone to a lab, they make sure that the software is secure and meets all FIDO security requirements, and then there's some metadata to go along with that so that relying parties can know which phones are security certified, which ones aren't. Maybe some relying parties care about that, maybe some of them don't. And if it's for financial transactions, maybe you care about security. If it's for social networking, maybe a little bit less so. But it enables an entirely new set of use cases and kind of helps the ecosystem adopt the FIDO authentication for more secure use cases. One of the other programs that's coming up that's a little bit more early in its development is biometric certification. And for FIDO, FIDO's always been biometric neutral, so we aren't just a fingerprint biometric, but face recognition, voice recognition, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the novel biometrics that we've seen. And this is coming up with a uniform way of certifying biometrics so that, again, relying parties can know what degree of reliability the biometrics have. So, for example, for fingerprints, making sure that when someone's trying to authenticate with my phone, that it can tell the difference between my fingerprint and someone else's fingerprint, and do things like presentation attack prevention, where it doesn't accept photocopies of fingerprints or other sorts of false artifacts. So that is still in development, and there will be more about that as we get closer to launching that program. And then just kind of as a teaser, we also have a number of new specifications, updates to existing specifications that are coming down the line, new features and existing specifications and entirely new specifications altogether. I don't believe we made public announcements about them yet, so I don't want to talk about them too much here, but for implementers that are interested, stay tuned, and we'll make sure that we have announcements about those new certifications as they become available. So next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the various implementations that we see. One of the exciting things about being involved in FIDO certification, especially at a very low level, is you get to see all the innovation that's happening in the market, all the new exciting devices that are coming out, all the new ideas that people have, and it really is the Wild West in the best kind of technology way, where there's a lot of really creative thinking going on and a lot of really cool use cases that are coming to market right now. Ramesh showed a slide that had a few dozen cell phones on them, and it seems like every cell phone OEM has their own strategy, their own approach, their own unique ideas, and it really is fun to see all the different creativity that's going on right now. So on the next slide, one of the big evolutions that has surprised us over the last few months is that while FIDO certification has been growing very, very steadily, and we've seen deployments by Google and Dropbox and Bank of America and NTT Docomo and very large relying parties, one of the unexpected spikes in growth has been in North Korea. And the number of certifications we've seen since the beginning of the year in South Korea has really, really spiked up. We've seen a large growth in the number of companies in South Korea that are getting certifications, a lot of different implementations, servers, authenticators, clients, iOS, Android. So obviously there's something going on in the Korean market that's really driving adoption of FIDO. And we have a number of interesting use cases that we've been able to identify, a number of interesting market drivers. And we're talking about having a webinar in the future about talking about this explosion in the Korean market. So for anyone that's interested in that, stay tuned for news from Andrew, and express your interest if you would like to know more about that. On the next slide, so I talked a little bit about BLE, and I just want to run through kind of the BLE and NFC use case because it is so much different, and it is such a great use case that highlights the ease of use of FIDO. FIDO is not just an interoperability standard, and it's not just a security standard, but it's always been about ease of use as well. So on the screen right now, you can see the traditional user login box backed up by the usual second factor authentication box where users would have to have some sort of a dongle with a security code and a random number on it that they have to type in. and that's not the best user experience. Instead, FIDO has a way of performing second step verification where, for example, for Bluetooth, all you have to do is click. So if you advance to the next build here, all it takes is a simple click, and your Bluetooth replaces that entire second factor experience. There's no code to type in, there's no pairing to happen, there's no digging out a device. It really is just a click experience, and the second factor authentication is performed. And likewise for NFC, it's not a click of a button like it is for Bluetooth. It's a swipe of a card on a phone or a tap of a card. And again, it's just a very, very simple user experience. There's no frustration. And I think this really highlights the ease of use of FIDO. It's really not just about security and interoperability, but it's also about improving users' lives and making it much easier to use FIDO. And these BLE and NFC standards that have been launched over the last 6 months or so are really an exciting evolution of FIDO, and we're really excited to see these products get out to market. On the next slide, we have some of the devices that are out in market right now. So Bluetooth, you can see examples of these Bluetooth devices, these Bluetooth authenticators I alluded to earlier. You can see just the one button that's on there. Just click the button and you're authenticated. It's interesting, the authenticator from Infineon obviously isn't a finished product, but it's a reference implementation for anyone that's looking to build products. And the rest of those products are available on the market right now. So for relying parties that are looking to go out and deploy Bluetooth second factor authentication, those are all available right now. And for implementers that are looking to roll out their own U2F BLE authenticator, there's obviously that Infineon reference platform. Likewise for NFC, you can see the various products that are there, as well as some logos of companies that don't have pictures of their products freely available. But it's really been great to see those NFC products getting out to market as well. And they've had a little bit of a 6-month jump start on the market, so they're a little bit ahead of Bluetooth. But it's really, really fun to see those getting deployments and implementations as well. On the next slide, I mentioned a little bit earlier that we talk a bit about the cool authentication and cool biometrics that are out there. Again, FIDO is biometric neutral, so we aren't based on fingerprints, we aren't based on one biometric or another, and we're really starting to see innovation that we've never even dreamed of coming to market in terms of the different forms of authenticators that are coming out there. And the ones that you see on this slide are just a sampling of them, and we really expect to see more and more as time goes on. Some of these have videos online, and if you're interested in this sort of thing, I'd really encourage you to go search for the company name and the name of the authentication or the biometric, and you'll get some really interesting videos that show, for example, palm recognition, where it's recognizing the lines on your hands and the dimensions of your hands and different features there for doing authentication, or the iris recognition, where it's kind of funny to watch it in action in real life, where you almost look like a superhero wearing a mask as it's doing a iris recognition. Sensory has come out with a really cool voice and face recognition. And then one of the ones that's newest to market is this light factor PIN authentication plus an audio port device you have type of authentication, where the dongle and the audio port is a part of the authentication process. So these are all really, really interesting. And like I said, I would imagine that 6 months from now we'll see authenticators that we couldn't even have dreamt of today. Next slide. So let me talk a little bit about tips for relying parties. I think probably half of our audience today is relying parties that are interested in deploying FIDO. Key considerations when you're thinking about deploying FIDO, obviously look for the FIDO certified logo. One of the things this offers for relying parties is ensuring out-of-the-box interoperability. So you can buy components from different vendors or buy a vertically integrated stack and make sure that you aren't locked into it later. And just make sure that all the pieces are going to work well together. So that's part of the value of FIDO. But also from a branding and user experience perspective, there's a broad ecosystem of authenticators and devices out there. You can use fingerprints and face recognition and all those cool biometrics that we just saw. You can use BLE and NFC for multi-factor authentication. So it gives users a lot of variability and choice over what works best for their use cases, while obviously giving relying parties control over the security aspects of the ecosystem. For relying parties who are looking to get started quickly, obviously there's open source implementations that are great for prototyping. There's open source for both UAF and U2F right now. So if any relying parties are looking to experiment with FIDO and understand how it works, that's obviously a great way to get started. And then obviously when you're thinking about deploying FIDO and you're putting together an RFP that includes some sort of authentication, make sure to mention FIDO as a form of requirement or optional candidate in your RFP, and that really helps provide a lot of pull-through and make sure that you're getting the highest quality for your deployments. The next two slides talk a little bit about deploying authentication. I won't walk through these in detail here, and these slides will be posted to the web later, but I did want to highlight how easy it is for relying parties to deploy FIDO in existing deployments. There's really just kind of two touch points for authentication. For example, if you already have a mobile application and you want to build UAF into it, there's just a single API that you have to figure out, the FIDO client API, and basically right next to your login screen on your mobile application, you just have to call that API to perform the FIDO biometric authentication, and it'll automatically interface to clients and authenticators that are already built into phones. So it's very, very easy to build applications on that wide array of phones that Ramesh showed in his part of the presentation. And on the web server side, it's as easy as integrating with a FIDO certified web server. And again, the interface there is very, very simple. It's as easy as, if not easier than verifying a password. And it's really just kind of a plug-in, drop-in type of solution. And for the deployments that we've studied internally to FIDO so far, we've heard great success stories about lowering support costs, lowering password resets to essentially zero because there's no passwords to reset anymore. Heard great case studies about user experience and feedback about how great the user experience has been. So this is really kind of a simple deployment that really hits a chord with users from what we've heard so far. And on the next slide, we talk a little bit about similar sort of second factor deployments. This diagram was provided by Yubico, and thank you for them for helping us out. They have a lot of deployment experience in terms of getting U2F deployments out to market. And their estimate is that it takes about less than 1 week to deploy second factor into existing services. The stats that we've heard back from the Google deployment is that login using U2F second factor is 4 times faster. There's been a significant reduction in fraud from their perspective, and there's also been a 40% overhead in fraud reduction. And there's actually a great white paper by Google. If you search for Google U2F white paper or something like that, or email Andrew or I, and we can get you that white paper. But that white paper walks through their experience in deploying U2F and all the benefits they've seen so far. It's a great case study. So likewise, I wanted to give a quick overview of tips for implementers. On the next slide, we talk a little bit about ecosystem. So ecosystem is really, it's an early stage for FIDO. So at this stage, it's not entrenched competitors duking it out for the last cent, but really the ocean is rising very quickly, and everyone that's part of the FIDO ecosystem is benefiting for it. So anyone that's participating in FIDO right now and getting involved, it's really a great time because like the old adage goes, a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that our implementers are really starting to see the pull through from relying parties in terms of people requesting FIDO, people requesting FIDO implementations and things like that. The value of certification, obviously it's higher quality, so having gone through the certification process, you go through those test tools that Ramesh mentioned, and you go through interoperability testing, make sure that you're interoperable with all the other devices on the market, and we're not going to have things that are broken when they're shipping. And then you're making sure that you're deployment ready. So you're making sure that your devices are ready to go now rather than waiting for someone to ask for them and then trying to play catch up in the market. And we're seeing a lot of market demand and pull through, which is really starting to create revenue for these FIDO-enabled products. So it's a great time to be certified and be part of that ecosystem. After you're certified, and I know that we have a lot of certified companies on the call today, one thing, I just want to mention a few things to get the most from your certification. Remember to use your FIDO certified logo. Use it at trade shows, on the little prop-up signs that are provided, on your websites, product briefs, etc. We have a lot of relying parties that we hear from right now that are asking us, who's FIDO certified? We're shopping for FIDO certified implementations. Who should we talk to about FIDO? So having your logo out there and using the FIDO logo is a great way to provide some pull-through from the certification and the effort that you put into doing that certification. I'd also say that being a member has its privileges. So in terms of membership and value, there's obviously different levels, but there's the plenaries 3 times a year for sponsor members or once a year for associate members. It's a great place to do networking. The relying parties are there. There's a lot of great conversation. It's a very friendly environment, and the FIDO family is growing very quickly. So it's great to be involved in that family at this early stage. And there's also discounts on certification as well as early access to specifications, which translates to first mover advantage in the market. So now is a great time to become a member of FIDO and take advantage of all those membership benefits and the certification benefits that come along with them. Just 2 last slides here. So the second to last one here, this is really kind of getting down into the weeds of how you get started in certification. So if I've whetted anyone's appetite with the value of certification and where to jump in, these are kind of some links to get started with. They're all on the FIDO Alliance website under the certification drop-down. So the first place to get started is getting access to the test tools. And Katie Weinleader, who runs the operations for certification, manages those tools, manages the interoperability events. She's really great in terms of helping people get through this process. Hopefully this website is self-explanatory, but obviously if there's any questions, you can always reach out to Katie or myself or anyone at the FIDO Alliance to help you through this process. In addition to our newly announced on-demand certification, we're also having an interop event in Korea that's in August. So August 30th through 31st for UAF and September 1st for U2F. The registration for that is open on our website, or obviously the on-demand certification is also open on our website right now. And then one last slide here. Thank you. So this is just, again, the slide that Ramesh had shown, talking about the process for certification. Start here with the conformance validation test tools. It's a very simple process, and again, check in on the fidoalliance.org/certification webpage for all the instructions and links to all the different web forms and things you'll need. And we're always happy to help out. Andrew?
Great. Thank you, Adam, and thanks to all our speakers. So that was kind of a whirlwind view of the FIDO certification program, our latest and greatest implementations, how you can get involved and all the benefits therein. What I want to do now is open up the session for questions. Again, you can type your questions in the chat window, and some of you already have. So let me start walking through some of these questions, and I'm going to address them to some of the panelists here. So again, the people on the call are Steve Wilson from Constellation Research, Ramesh Kasanapalli from Knock Knock Labs, and Adam Powers from FIDO Alliance. So first question, is certification for version 1.0, and what about v2.0, the FIDO spec? How does that factor into certification? So Adam, maybe you can address this about how the certification process evolves as the specifications mature and are released.
Yeah, you know, that's just now beginning to become a topic of conversation internal to FIDO's certification working group. The incremental changes to existing specifications what we're looking at, since the increments at this point are so small, we'll just basically have a rolling certification program where the test tools and the interop events try to keep up to date with the latest versions of the specifications. And we'll have some, obviously, consideration for sunrise and sunset of existing certification programs so that we don't interrupt anyone's product plans or anything like that. I don't think that we have any specific details that we've announced yet, but stay tuned for that over the next few weeks, and I think that you'll see some changes to the certification policy to help clarify that exact process.
Okay, great. Thanks, Adam. Another related question. Can you talk a little more about the process to certify FIDO products, not just hardware, but also software? So I think
Sure,
some of this, yeah. Maybe talk about the
yeah,
a little bit.
The process is generally the same across all products. So it always starts off with the test tools, and we have a set of automated test tools for U2F and a set of automated test tools for UAF that basically exercise all the APIs and all the established protocols, messaging formats, and whatnot to make sure that any implementation is robust and a correct implementation of the specifications. So the test tools apply to servers, they apply to authenticators, they apply to clients, and so that's the first step. The second step is the interoperability testing, which is basically implementers that have servers, clients, authenticators all show up in the same room on the same day, and we've had, I think, over 70 people at some of these events where basically all the different products will test together over the course of 1, 2, or 3 days, depending on how many implementations we have. And basically, for every authenticator vendor, you'll test with every server. For every server vendor, you'll test with every authenticator. And we see a lot of interesting outcomes from that, because even though we've been through test tools, you'll see that bugs are found and different interpretations of the specifications and things like that will get highlighted and fixed throughout the course of those interoperability events. So that's the second step in certification. And after you've been through the test tools and the interoperability testing, then you can apply for certification, which is basically just saying we passed those 2 steps, we're agreeing to pay the certification fee, which is posted on the website. And then finally, an optional step at the very end is if you'd like to use a FIDO logo, and most companies do, you sign a trademark licensing agreement just agreeing not to squish the logo or change the colors of it and only use it in the right context and things like that, which enables you to use the FIDO logo on your products and websites and mobile applications and whatnot. So that's kind of the abbreviated version. On the website, under the certification drop-down menu, there's descriptions of the certification test tools, descriptions of the interoperability and on-demand testing, and descriptions of how to submit for certification, and the TLMA is also up there for getting started on your legal review early. So a lot of that's on the website. Again, if questions come up, reach out to Katie or myself, and we're happy to help you with that.
Super. Thanks, Adam. Another question here about iOS support on FIDO. So, we showed a wide range of handsets, primarily Android handsets that support FIDO, and then there's a slide talking about how FIDO can be supported on iOS. So, Ramesh, maybe you have some perspective about bringing FIDO to iOS, and Adam, you may as well. So,
yes. Yes. The FIDO today, as we all know, Touch ID devices, fingerprint-enabled iPhones have been around for more than 2 years now, and particularly in U.S. market, close to 60%, 50-60% of the market is iPhone. And we have actually, from knock-knock standpoint, we have an SDK that one can use to enable any iOS application simply by integrating our SDK. And the backend FIDO server will accept whether it is iPhone-based FIDO traffic coming in or an Android-based FIDO traffic that is coming in. We simply, use the same. We have SDK for both Android and iOS. And considering the number of phones that are out there, there is a significant population of devices that can be FIDO enabled fairly quickly, and also with respect to U2F BLE, if the relying party wants to use a second factor because of the Bluetooth enablement, even iPhones can use that to deploy FIDO U2F or FIDO UAF very easily and in a more secure way.
Just one thing to add to that is that if there are people that are interested in playing around with iOS applications for UAF or U2F, or even Android applications for UAF or U2F, there are a number of those that are actually publicly available on the Apple iTunes Store or through the Google Play Store. So a lot of these apps, while some of them are relying party applications, some of them are also just kind of demo applications. So there's a wealth of applications out there for people to start experimenting with right now.
Okay,
Right.
thanks. We have a lot of questions. We're going to do our best to get through all these in the next couple of minutes. For anyone whose question is not answered on the phone, we will most certainly come back to you via email. Here's a good one that we get often. How do I recover my access if I lost my device, which was used to generate credentials when I go with FIDO? Basically, I'm asking about user self-service. So what happens if someone has basically enrolled a second factor device for strong authentication, they lose that device? What's that user experience like? So Adam, maybe you could touch on that.
Sure, happy to. One of the important aspects about FIDO is that it's a framework for authentication that leaves a lot of flexibility in terms of the different use cases around it. It can be combined with passwords, it can be combined with other existing login mechanisms or SMS second factor, things like that. So that use case specifically about lost devices and things like that is part of the flexibility that FIDO enables in terms of leaving relying parties, enabling relying parties to make their own decisions about how they want to handle some of those use cases. But I understand that some people need a little bit of guidance around that sort of things. Some of the use cases we've seen are, for example, relying parties having websites where it lists all your devices, and you can go in there and delete lost devices. You can always pair more devices using an existing username and password if you already have a username and password associated with an account, or if there's some other stronger form of authentication, you can use that as well. It really does come back into re-enrolling in an account and reassociating a device with an account and things like that. And I think that there's actually some case studies and presentations out there that walk through some of this, and we'll try and post some links for some of those as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Adam. Here's an interesting question. Again, we have so many questions. It's fantastic. Besides mobile devices, tablets, etc., are you seeing use case trends around IoT, Internet of Things? So, Steve, I'd be curious to get your perspective on this. You know, how do you see simpler, stronger authentication playing into the IoT landscape?
It's completely front and center. You know, we've just come out of the Cloud Identity Summit in New Orleans 2 weeks ago. Almost every discussion was around IoT. The ability to identify devices reliably and more subtly to know the attributes of these devices without sort of over-identifying the users is absolutely essential. So it goes to matters of fine-grained access control, being able to tell the difference between one device and another really specifically. So that ability for FIDO to mediate different signals about devices back to back-end servers is absolutely, you know, I think it should go without saying. So there are actually a number of wearable devices that are, you know, wearable innovators that are prominent members of the FIDO Alliance. And, you know, what goes for mobiles goes for wearables more and more. The wearables and the IoT devices are going to be you know, as smart and as automatic as they are, they're going to operate with very little user intervention. So it's critical that on the server side, the services that are manipulating and listening to and feeding back to these devices, they need to be able to know the state of the device. They need to know what the device is authorized to do, and they need to know how that device has been behaving over time. And so, you know, we're seeing enormous power from FIDO for authenticating IoT.
Thanks, Steve. Ramesh, do you have any added perspective there?
Yeah, I think the FIDO is extremely well suited even for IoT. If you see the entire FIDO UAF protocol, for instance, it's all about user authenticating himself to the device then authenticating to a backend service or a server. It doesn't really matter. So if you see the second step or second part of authentication that FIDO protocol promotes is actually device-to-device communications. It's a very classical IoT kind of environment. So if you take the first step, where for any IoT devices to do any command-based function, the initiation step has to happen from a user intervention or some other event kind of intervention that will trigger the device-to-device communication on the back end between IoTs. So in this scenario, somebody is trying to turn on and off a thermostat at home or a home security system. Between the wireless router and the actual device that does that is a typical device-to-device authentication. But the first device that kicks that event will have to be triggered from outside, and you need to make sure the person who is actually triggering that is the right guy that's getting initiated or right device that it is initiating. In that perspective, if you see the two split kind of authentication that happens where user authenticates to a device then authenticates to other device or service, is the second step is a classic IoT use case. So it's a very good question, and I think if you can see the protocol more deeply, you will understand that this is a very good candidate for IoT, and in fact there are some pilots that are being discussed right now that fall into this space. Thank you.
Thanks, Ramesh. Let me take another question here. How do we handle multiple users on a device? With device authentication, does it require user enrollment and user authentication separately? So I guess the use case would be where you have a shared device and you want to be able to use FIDO authentication to manage users on said device. Adam, do you have a short answer to that?
I'm sorry, my line broke up in the middle of that. Can you say that again?
Yeah, the question is, how do we handle multiple users on a device? So the use case is you have a shared device and you want to use FIDO authentication for multiple users on a shared device. Does that require a separate user? Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's been built in from day one, and it's something that obviously people expect is that you have even different accounts for the same user with the same relying party. So we expect a multiplicity of devices from different users and expect different users sharing devices and things like that. Obviously a little bit more on the authentication side than on the something that you have second factor side. But both of them have those sorts of concepts built into them. There is, in a number of the UAF certified clients, and it's not necessarily a mandatory piece, but that, again, enabling innovation and variety in the ecosystem, there have been a large number of clients that will actually pop up a selector for you when you're doing your authentication if they recognize that you have multiple accounts with the same authenticator and say, which client account do you want to log into? And there's other innovative ways that problem has been addressed as well. So again, FIDO's a framework that's enabling an ecosystem and lots of different use cases and lots of different implementations, but I would encourage you to reach out to me if you'd like to see specific demos of that, or ask your favorite vendor as well to give you a demo of how the multiple user use cases work.
Okay, thanks, Adam. So here's a common question. Will this video be provided to view at a later date? Yes, we will post the replay of this video along with the slides on SlideShare. We'll aim to have that up in the next day or so. It always takes a little time to process this. And then you'll be receiving a follow-up email which should have relevant links to that. If not, you could always visit the FIDO Alliance website and go to the event section. In past events, we'll have the archived footage of this. We're at the top of the hour. I am going to extend this by around 5 minutes to try to handle a couple more questions. And then again, everybody else, we will get back to you offline if we weren't able to answer today. Okay, so one quick question. It's related to certification. Adam, can you give a short explanation of the metadata service? What is the FIDO metadata service, and how does it pertain to FIDO certification?
Sure, and that's actually a really great question because people have a lot of questions about the metadata service, and I do feel like it's a huge understated value of the FIDO ecosystem. For every authenticator and the different varieties of authenticators out there, each one of them has metadata associated with them. What type of biometric it's using, which protocols it supports, whether it's got its keys, security encryption keys stored in hardware and software, what security level it's certified to, whether it's functionally certified, so on and so forth. And there's a very long list of metadata fields in the metadata specification that people can look at to understand what that metadata about authenticators is about. As an optional piece for the FIDO ecosystem, when an authenticator, even before it gets certified or even after, it can submit its metadata to a metadata service, which is basically a large global database provided by FIDO that is cryptographically signed, so all the data in there is ensured to be correct and untampered with. And that metadata service is intended for relying parties to basically download all the data statically. It does, new authenticators don't come on the market very often, so it's updated about once every 2 weeks right now. And then relying parties can look at all the metadata for each authenticator to make decisions about whether they trust them or not. They can say, oh, look, this authenticator has fingerprint biometrics. I like that. Oh, this one's storing its keys in software. Oh, well, maybe it's okay, maybe it's not okay, depending on what your service is. And they can make risk assessments of each authenticator as it appears at their service. So it enables a variety of authenticators to exist in the ecosystem while at the same time enabling relying parties to still have control over risk and authentication. So it's a critical piece of infrastructure, and we've seen some great uptake of the metadata service in terms of integration with services, as well as the number of authenticators that are being registered in it available right now. Anyone that's interested in seeing the metadata that's in there, the URL for the metadata service is mds.fidoalliance.org, and the garbage that you download out of that, and it looks like a bunch of random characters, is actually a JSON web token that you can cut and paste into jwt.io to decode and actually see all the authenticators that are registered with the metadata service. So if anyone's interested, that's a good way of getting a little bit more information about the metadata service.
Thanks, Adam. So another resource I want to point everyone to, so a lot of these, there's still several questions. There's a FIDO Dev mail alias, which is a community list for kind of technical related questions, and so a lot of these questions actually be well suited there for that community. So I encourage you to subscribe to that. Now you could link. If you go to FIDOalliance.org, towards the bottom there's a link to sign up for FIDO-Dev. So I'd encourage you to relay some of those questions there. I'm going to take one last question here. And I'll lead with an answer. The question is, what are the benefits for startups who want to implement FIDO? I think that one of the benefits that hopefully came through on the webinar today is that there's a rapidly growing ecosystem of products and services supporting FIDO and FIDO certified products that's being created to address a large demand from relying parties and service providers that are eager to deploy FIDO authentication. So the inherent benefit then for a startup implementing FIDO is that you have a built-in marketplace who's eager to understand and see your FIDO products and services. Ramesh, do you want to add on to that as far as startup benefits for implementing FIDO?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
question is, what are the benefits for startups who wish to implement FIDO? I thought you might have some perspective there.
Yeah, the thing is, as you guys know, FIDO protocol is also going to be part of W3C. Now there is a working group there. So it's going to be part and parcel of web standards, which will force all the browsers to implement, which will in turn force all the operating systems guys to implement. So FIDO is going to be, in my opinion, is going to be a major part of core infrastructure going forward. So if any startup is trying to do anything on a cloud-based side or a service-based side, I think FIDO would be a natural choice for them to go ahead and start implementing now itself, which will, right from the beginning, as a startup company, will get you guys out of the password jail even to start with.
Good. Okay. Well, with that, I want to bring this to a close. So again, anyone who has outstanding questions, we will do our best to get back to you over the next couple of days. You can also feel free to email Adam or I directly at adam@FIDOalliance.org or andrew@FIDOalliance.org, or I encourage you to take part in the FIDO Dev mail list. A replay of this will be provided. Please also take time to complete the survey. And thanks again to our panelists, Steve, Ramesh, and Adam. So thank you all very much, and stay tuned for future webinars.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.